in this market, I tell buyers, let's put our best foot forward because you really like this house. I just talked to the agent. To have a shot, it sounds like we'll have to do this, that, and the other. They tell me what they're comfortable with, and then we do it. Obviously it's their decision at the end of the day, but I always like being honest with them.
All right, so welcome back to the Your Home podcast, where you are home. Today we have a very special guest with us. We have Daniel Maldonado, Fairfax local, Northern Virginia agent, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's been going on in the market today. Very excited to have you on. I know that you have a lot of different insights as an agent. You've done a lot of transactions, been pretty successful, self-made with it. So, yeah. So I guess for starters, tell us a little bit how you got into real estate.
Sort of by accident. I was at Mason, needed some, beer money. I think I told you the story, and, I saw a company that was looking for a courier to just put the signs in the ground. And they, I think part of the requirement was that you had to have a car, which I didn't have. But luckily my girlfriend at the time did. So I said I had a car and would use her car at the beginning and then eventually got my own. And I was just putting signs in the ground, coming soon, for sale, all that sort of stuff. And, after a while, the team I was working for, they were like, you're not that dumb, maybe get your license, and at first I was super intimidated by it, but, I got it and sold a few houses while still in college, but didn't really, obviously start full time until after. And then, sort of hit the ground running.
Cool.
After college.
Coming in after college, right? Real estate is it's a pretty big networking, a lot of successful realtors have kind of big networks, right? Yeah. Where they're getting their referrals, where they're getting business. So as somebody right out of college, probably a lot of your friends weren't really buying real estate necessarily. So how did you kind of make that work?
They weren't, but they were renting. And I think I've told you this story is, so I left, the team I was on, I went to a different brokerage, late in 2018. And, cause I had sort of learned, okay, this is how I had a few sales under my belt. I had the processes and stuff down. So I was like, all right, let's, I made a switch, and like you said, it was 2019, 2018. I was baby faced. I wouldn't have bought a house with me. So I really think that. So, but I remember watching. I don't know if you've heard of the Graham Stephan podcast. I think I mentioned it to you. One of the things he mentioned that he got his start in real estate was just grinding rentals. That no one wants to do them. But it's a great way to meet people. So that's what I did. I think I just put my head down and, I would reach out to agents and say, I was living in Arlington. So I would say, hey, you've got this townhouse for rent. You probably don't want to show it. I'm happy to show it for you. Cause they're going to keep, 3/4 of the commission and then pay out a quarter to the tenant agent. Mm-hmm. So they're like, I'm not going to drive out to Arlington to show it for, a couple $100. But I lived there, so I was like, I'll walk over and, and show it to you. But more importantly, I was meeting people. So I think I did like 70 or so leases that year.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Or it sounds like a lot. I feel like that's a lot.
No, it was a grind. I really, because a lease transactions, I would say it's almost as much work as a sale. Really? But you're getting a fraction of the pay.
Yeah. Is that when you say the work? Is that just because you still have to show people a bunch of places? Guess. Or,
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I had people that I had to show 10, 20, 30 homes before they were picky, and I didn't have anything else to do, so I was like, I'll show you all these properties.
Sure.
And then some I learned over time, were just. I guess just enjoyed hanging out with me and looking at houses. They never actually ended up renting anything. And so eventually I was like, all right, well, I can't just be a tour guide for you forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great way to meet people. And I've looked back, on my sales, and large chunk of them have just come from, people I helped rent that then bought. A lot of them have now sold with me and referred me people. So I think that's been a big part of how I've, not entirely so, but a big part of how I got started.
laid the foundation for the future sales.
Sort of like some grunt work in the beginning.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't want to do today. But
2019,
I was, living in Arlington and rolling around.
Yeah, right. It worked. Yeah. Well, that's great. So, I mean, but that's pretty impressive too. If, a lot of your business today is coming from, those, like that foundation you laid, those repeat customers and that. So you must be doing something that's, really separating yourself or making, leaving that lasting impression that a customer wants to, first person they call is you.
Right. It's just, I think all the people I helped weren't used to that level of service I was giving them for a rental. So they're like, all right, mental note, when I'm buying down the road, I'm going to reach out to him. Case in point, I just had, someone reach out to me that I had to look back. It was literally 5 years ago this month that I helped her lease a house in Arlington.
Wow.
Didn't really hear from her much besides, happy Thanksgiving, whatever. I would check in on her. Been in the same home for these 5 years, and then just recently was like, tired of renting. I want to buy, $1 million price point. I'm like, so those are the best sort of,
buyers.
Hey, like, it's like, oh, I remember you, like, whatever. But, and it's an organic thing because, they already know me and trust me and sort of planted that seed years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about that level of service, that seems to be a little bit of a separating factor for you. What can you get a little specific? Like, what are those things that you're doing that other people aren't doing?
For example, like, I used to pick people up at their apartments and drive them around to see places to make it, easier, and just responsiveness. A lot of my reviews say, because I went to a conference once, and they said, one of I think the top traits people look for in their real estate agent are, honesty and responsiveness, I think, were two of the three or the two.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
And I was like, all right, honesty, got it. I'm not like a dishonest person, so that's easy. And then the other one's responsiveness. So people reach out to me, try to get back to them.
Yeah.
So that's one, responsiveness and just being willing to go the extra mile. I've pressure washed fences. I've mowed lawns. Whatever I've had to do to
get it done,
provide value. Yeah. Whether that's and it's not always sexy. I have a friend who's just getting into real estate in Colorado, and he was texting me yesterday. I think he was doing some sort of shadowing and inspection, and he's like, all right, I'm looking at poop. And I was like, welcome to the gig. It's not it's not always glamorous, like you see on TV that you're.
It's not always selling sunset out there, yeah.
No, and I responded to him, and it was funny because I have a listing now where the toilet tank lid is chipped, and literally I was spending part of my day finding this exact replacement toilet tank lid, and I was like, speaking of crap, look what I'm doing. So it's just stuff like that. Like a lot of it's monotonous, but it's whatever you need to do to, if a buyer walks in and sees that the tank lid is chipped, not good.
Right.
So got to get a replacement.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean,
silly things like that.
I'd have to agree. As far as like, real estate agents that I've worked with, I mean, the best ones to work with are responsive.
Yeah.
Right. I've worked with plenty of agents that aren't really that way, that are like tough to get a hold of, which I always find kind of baffling to me. I'm like, if we're doing the loan, like we got to work together as a team, right? And that the whole team factor for the mortgage person, the realtor, the title company, I mean, whoever, it's kind of almost like you're leading the agent. You're kind of almost leading the charge, leading the whole team to closing, because everybody kind of plays their role. But I feel like those best transactions, it's the communication is always key. So, and that always matriculates to the customer too. I can always tell when the customer is super happy with their agent, and when they're like, I don't 100% know what's going on, or or vice versa kind of thing. But yeah, that's awesome. I mean, as far as like the Nova market goes, right, Northern Virginia, I mean, are you seeing any? I mean, what kind of trends are you seeing out there in the streets these days? Anything?
Luckily, it's not as crazy as it was 2021 or so when
Right.
rates were historically low. That was just nuts. Property would hit the market, it would have 20 bids. Oftentimes we wouldn't even try because we're like, this is just someone's going to overpay for this. And
Right.
that's what I would tell buyers is, someone's going to overpay for this and probably regret it. There's always new listings coming on. Let's just be patient. And I think that also helps me gain their trust is that I really don't view myself as a salesperson. I'm more so, I guess, a consultant. I'm like, oftentimes they're excited about a home and I'll talk them out of it. I'll say, well, hey, busy road in the back or, whatever concern I might have. And then, that's food for thought for them. And then they pass on it. But then a better house comes on and I'm excited. And then they're like, all right, well, if he's excited, then,
Yeah.
then this one's good. So yeah, I'm never going to be like, buy this house so I can make a commission. I want you to be happy and look back and be like, wow, that was a great investment. And then have a relationship for the long term. Because I plan to be here a while.
Yeah.
I'm not planning to move or retire or anything. So I'm looking at this as a...
No, definitely. I mean, I think that's a really important. I mean, we look at it the same way. It's like we really strive to make sure, we look at every customer's, A, we got to do a really great job for you right here, right now, and then B, the reward of doing that is you're going to want to work with us for the long term. We kind of have the customer for life mentality. Whenever we're working with people on it, and it is kind of like that. Like you said, like it's almost like a consultant or like a guide.
Yep.
Right. There's a bunch of different mortgage options. There's a bunch of different house options.
Right.
And, I'm here to work with you to figure out the best one that works for you. There's a million different ways you can structure a mortgage. There's a million different ways you can, find the right house or different things that play into what is the right house for you. And, it's kind of, everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah, definitely. But as far as trends, now with rates having gone up, it's a lot more, it's not as crazy, which is, usually we can
It's definitely still competitive, though.
100%, but it's, it's not like instead of 20, we're maybe seeing 5 or 6.
Right.
And we have a shot. And we can, maybe keep some contingencies or, oftentimes buyers don't want to waive their inspection, which I totally understand. I'll say, well, hey, to have a shot here, let's maybe do a pre-inspection, which is where, and oftentimes people I meet don't know about this. It's just...
Is that like the walk and talk one?
Well, you could do that. You could do a more thorough one, but you ask the listing agent, hey, we're very interested in this house. Can we get in before we put our offer in to just do an inspection? Sometimes they're not cool with it, but most of the time they are.
Yeah.
And my inspector comes in and does usually an hour or so and just bare bones, structure, systems, all that, and just gives the buyer peace of mind that it's not falling apart. And then, they can usually feel comfortable waiving that. And that'll help them stand out over maybe 2 of the offers. And then it comes down to price and other terms with the other ones. So
no, definitely. When I bought my house, I bought it sight unseen. And I had to waive everything. I bought in 2020.
Oh, gosh.
Like you were saying, it was kind of nuts.
Oh, you didn't even see the interior?
No, it was wild.
Wow.
It was wild. After the first time I walked in, I was like, well, I hope I like it because...
Had you seen similar models or?
Yeah, and also I just think from doing what I do, I just am kind of, I don't know if numb is the right word, but I just maybe didn't have the same, I mean, definitely wouldn't have had the same anxieties that a different first time home buyer might have had, because, I don't know, just seeing it and working with it every day, I was like, and I did, and it was that thing. I walked into a couple different townhouses. It's like I'm looking at the pictures online.
Yeah,
it was more for me about the area.
Sure,
right? The area and
Sure,
and that's kind of how I did it. But it was one of those things. Because I did get a home inspection after the fact.
Yeah.
And there was definitely stuff on there that I wasn't expecting.
Really?
But it was kind of like, well, I guess we're just gonna take it. We're gonna figure it out. It's been fun.
Was it like HVAC and electrical stuff? Or?
I mean, I've had to do a couple repairs along the way, but nothing too crazy. And,
sure.
And the thing is, you can have a perfect home inspection, and then
Sure.
2 months after closing, something happens to the house that
Yeah.
you have to put repairs in too. So it's like, just because you get the home inspection doesn't necessarily
No,
mean
the house is perfect.
I'm not saying people shouldn't get home inspections, but
Right.
it's just something to think about, because it is like that. It's tough. Obviously, like you were saying, you don't want to, tell your buyers that they don't have to get a home inspection, but
Yeah.
you also have to be realistic with the fact that there are other people out there that might be putting offers in on
Right.
that. There's a good chance they are putting offers in on this
Right.
home and waiving contingencies. So, how bad do you want it, kind of thing. It's unfortunate overall. I feel for buyers, because that is the reality of the situation.
Sure.
But it kind of is what it is. It's like, it's tough.
What I've started doing is I just put the ball in their court. I tell them, you really like this house. I just talked to the agent. They have multiple offers and they're expecting more. To have a shot, it sounds like we'll have to do this, that, and the other. And then I tell them what I would do to win it. They tell me what they're comfortable with. Or maybe not comfortable, what they're willing to do. They're probably not comfortable, but what their
max is.
Yeah, what they're able to do, whether
Yeah.
it's and then we do it. Obviously it's their decision at the end of the day, but I always like being honest with them. It's better to have them be disappointed that they, put their best foot forward and didn't win it, versus like, oh shoot, had we known if we had done this, maybe we would have had a shot. So
right.
In this market, I tell buyers, let's put our best foot forward, because you want to leave it all in the field.
Yeah.
Especially this time of year where,
No, for sure. It's so true too that it really does vary kind of market to market, because we're in a couple different states, not just, Virginia. The majority of our stuff is local around here, but, in different areas, it's different, it's like you might not have it as competitive or this, but around here right now, it's definitely, people are still buying houses even with the rates high. And
sure.
And that's the thing that's a big question mark too, is what happens when rates go down. Now, when that's going to happen, I don't know. They keep pushing that one back a little bit, so, which I'm not surprised about.
Yeah,
I was surprised at the optimism that they were going to have as many rate cuts this year, and they were going to come way down into the fives again. But, but that's going to bring more buyers in the market. It's going to be similar, and then, the other thing that's going on. I don't know how much or kind of how into it you've been, or how closely you've been following it, but the NAR lawsuit with the with the borrower or the buyer commissions and the sellers paying them. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Very surface level, but from what I have looked at, it seems to be like most other things, very sensationalized. Like I've read bits of it where it's like, the standard 6% commission is a thing of the past. But ever since I've been in real estate, it really hasn't been the standard.
Yeah.
It's been maybe 5% or less. The most recent transaction I did, the buyer compensation was 2%.
Right. I do feel like it has evolved a little bit. A lot of times it's more like 4.5%. 5%,
it's
not the full 6%, which is still a fair amount of money, but
right.
But it's not really 6%. They kind of over-sensationalize
right. So
that.
That part, I think it's like, all right, well, that's not been at least here.
Right.
For a while, maybe in like the early 2000s, I look back and it was like 3% across the board. But, my thought process, at first I was a bit worried, like, oh shoot, am I going to, have to look for another job, whatever. But I think it boils down to people will still need homes. Most people are clueless as to the process, and they'll be willing to pay for help in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I should still have a job. Because like there's some people, who just crap on real estate agents, and they're like, they're greedy and they don't deserve this money and you can just do it yourself. Sure, some people might be able to list their home themselves, but I think a lot of people don't feel confident doing that or want the help of a professional. I don't do my own taxes. Like, the people want professional help.
Right. Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah. A lot of people don't do their own taxes, but they could.
I could do it, but probably wouldn't do it that well.
Right.
Versus someone who does it all day, every day and has a pulse on the...
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing too. I think the work that really goes in on the real estate side of buying or selling a house is a little undervalued in that media sensation, kind of like you're saying a little bit. Yeah. There is a lot of intricacies with it, and there's a lot of things that have to happen, and if you don't know what you're doing, there's kind of a lot at stake. So if it were me, I would use an agent every time. I mean, the other piece that I do find really interesting about it is that, the whole kind of argument behind this lawsuit is that, the sellers are being forced to pay a certain amount of buyers, the buyer's commission, right? But really, who actually pays for the buyer's commission? The buyer.
Right.
Because it's financed into the loan.
Sure.
Right? So if you separate, technically it comes out of the seller's proceeds.
Sure.
But that entire percentage, the total amount of the commission percentage is factored into the appraisal value of the home, which the buyer is getting a loan for or paying in cash.
Yeah.
So, yes, technically it comes out of the seller's proceeds, but it's included in the sales price.
Sure.
So, really, I don't know. I mean, it is very early on in it, so we don't really know kind of what outcome there's going to be. But if you make it so then the buyer has to pay that in cash versus them being able to have it effectively financed into their loan through the sales price, I think it's bad because it's just another barrier for
most
people
buyers.
to have to jump over. You already have the down payment, you already have the closing costs, which in a less competitive market, you might be able to get the closing costs covered by the seller, but if you're waiving an inspection contingency, you're certainly not asking for seller credit.
Right. Especially around here that the price points are high. Most buyers are putting 3 to 5% down. They got to budget another couple percent for closing costs, so you're already close to 10%.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the homes around here are older, so they're like, oh, we got to replace the roof in a few years. So it's like everything's compounding. So I personally think it's worked well the way it has been. How they're going to end up shuffling how agents get paid, I have no control over.
Right.
But
and that's exactly it. I feel like at the end of the day, it's just a shuffling.
Yeah.
It's just a shuffling of this cost and this service and this entire industry that's still going to exist regardless of how you kind of slice and dice this lawsuit. But I guess we'll see what happens. I don't know.
And I see a lot of people on YouTube like hating on agents, and they're like, you can just do what you're, like I said. Sure, some people can probably do it themselves, but most buyers,
if you want to, you can right now. You can.
Yeah. That's always been a thing. There's always
You're
been
always able to do that technically.
There's always been FSBOs and buyers that maybe hire an attorney or something to help them write the paperwork. In my opinion, I think you're much better off with a specialist in the market you're wanting to buy in who has a track record. You'll be better off, even factoring in, them getting paid. But, so interesting times.
Yeah, I know. It definitely is. What do you think, some of the biggest misconceptions you run into with buyers or first time buyers, on a regular basis?
Oftentimes, surprisingly still the 20% down requirement.
Really?
Yeah, some of my friends, they're like, oh, well, I'm still saving to put 20% down. I'm like, well, around here, you'll probably be saving a while because, average sales cost, I think, is $650, $700 or so, I think, around here. And, not many people in our age have $150, $200K just, in the bank. That takes a while. So
right, and that the whole time you're saving it, the prices keep going up.
And unless you're living,
so it keeps moving the goalpost on you as far as how much you need.
Yeah,
and you could be catching the appreciation if you just did it with less down now. And really, even if you did have 200, if you had 200,000 was the 20% number.
Yeah.
If you had exactly 200,000, you had exactly 20%.
Yeah.
I would never recommend for you to put all of that into the house.
Sure. Yeah.
You could always do a recast after the fact. There's a good chance you're going to refinance at some point. I mean, there's just so many, not to nerd out on the mortgage side of things, but there's just a lot of ways to,
Yeah,
it's like if you ever get tired of the extra money in your bank account, if you get tired of looking at it there, you can always put it towards the mortgage as much as you want at any time. They'll take the money in advance.
Yeah.
If you really want to get it out of your bank account and put it into your house.
Yeah.
But, I don't know.
That and also the stigma of paying mortgage insurance. I think some people are like, I don't want to pay mortgage insurance. I'm like,
if you have high credit, it's really not that much. It's really not that much.
A and B, it's like, okay, well, you're buying property. This is just cost of doing business sort of thing. And last thing, and I've told buyers this before, is they're like, well, I don't know if I want to buy because I might move in a few years. I say, great. If you're still going to probably be here a few years. You probably should buy. You could always rent it. And in this market, locally, we don't have the cash flow as far as other markets. But I heard a great point from a YouTuber. He said, okay, your property, your payment's $3,000. You can rent it for $25,000. You're investing $6,000 a year in real estate, which, look at that as like a retirement investment or something like that. So people are like, oh, I can't.
Right. No, I mean, that is totally the other thing with it is like, yeah, your down payment that you put at closing, you're just parting with that money.
Yeah.
Because it's going into an asset that you're going to be able to sell later and get that money back. It's
Hopefully
just illiquid. So I like to think of it as you're just parting with it. You're not spending it.
Yeah.
You're just parting with it.
And for people like me, it's good to not see it and to be able to, like Robinhood, you can easily buy and sell, and then before you know it, you've lost a bunch of money. So
right.
Real estate, it's kind of good that it's out of sight, out of mind, and hard to liquidate.
Right.
Harder.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, hey, I mean, this has been pretty good. I had, so I guess one question we've been kind of asking some of our agents when they come on. Tell me about your most rewarding transaction.
I've had a rewarding, I guess one that was great was I had a couple I was helping where I think their price cap was like a pretty firm 600. And, everything we were seeing in that range price point, they weren't too happy with. So, I'm always out previewing houses for buyers I'm helping. And what I'll do is usually cast a wider net price-wise, because oftentimes a listing will be overpriced, go stale, and then you can come in and get it down some. There was a house that had just been on the market for a while. I think it was like 675 originally, then came down a bit. I went to tour it. It didn't have good marketing, which is another thing I tell people to look for. If it doesn't have good marketing, it might get overlooked by other buyers, and then probably it's a good thing for the buyer, not so much the seller, right? Because they're not getting the best exposure.
Right.
We went to see it. I think we got it for like closer to 600. I think a little bit above what their max was, but it ended up appraising like $50K over what they paid for it.
Wow.
Off the bat. So we already knew it was a good deal, but it was nice to get the validation from the appraiser. And I think we can talk about that sort of stuff, right? Like appraisal.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if it's like, that's like...
No.
But it was nice to get that validation, but I've also tracked comps for them, and there's been sales in like the 800s, even one above $1 million of the same exact model.
Wow.
And this was only like a year or two ago. So I'm like, it's been very rewarding that, and they were a rental lead, but that I've helped them build so much wealth just from them trusting me. Now they have, and the house was already renovated. Like I said, it just wasn't.
So they got it for how much? So they got it for 600?
It was like, I think it was like 610, 615.
Got it for 610. It appraised $50K over.
Right.
And then now, 2 years later, a year or two later,
there was a comp that was done to the nines. Like this, I would say this house was maybe like an 8 out of 10 condition wise.
Sure.
There was one, I think later that year that came on the market, 10 out of 10. Like they really went all out with the renovations and stuff, but it was still an identical model, square footage.
Yeah.
Down the street, it sold for over $1 million. So in my mind, I'm like telling them conservatively,
800.
You have a few $100,000 of built-in equity.
Yeah.
And that's not to say every transaction's like that, but when I'm able, I had another buyer who's thrilled every time he sees the recent set, because a lot of the homes around here are tract homes where there's identical models. So it's very easy to sort of keep tabs on your market value, because you can see, all right, my neighbor just sold for this.
Right.
It's the same house.
Right.
I'm probably worth this. And it's rewarding to see people happy with the wealth they're building.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, a fun fact, if people didn't really know this, but I mean, what you're saying about the similar model piece is by far a bigger driver on the, an appraisal value of the home compared to if you have hardwood versus laminate flooring.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the biggest driver on appraisals is the comparable sales in the shortest time, in the most similar size. And, of the house and everything. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's crazy. So you said, you help those people with a rental.
Yep.
got him a house at closing. They were already $50K ahead on equity, and then a year or two later, they could probably sell it for another $850. So
I was on my honeymoon when I got the call from the lender.
So they're up like, you know, somewhere in the $200,000 or $300,000 range on the equity. I mean, thank God they called you for a rental. I mean, sheesh, life changing. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and And I try to do that for everyone. I mean, obviously, I can't guarantee that, but, you know,
Right.
I try to find houses that maybe have been overlooked by the market. And, you know, I tell them, okay, this house photographs poorly and the bathrooms are dated, but I know great contractors that can do it for this and, you know, help build you value.
Yeah.
You know, I don't love like flips
Right.
and those sort of houses from a buyer perspective because you're really paying a premium.
Yeah.
You know, someone bought a dilapidated house, fixed it up. Sometimes they cut corners.
Right.
And now they're trying to get top dollar. And a lot of the buyers around here are willing to pay top dollar for move-in ready, but you're not going to get the same level of, you know, usually,
Yeah.
you know.
You're kind of putting off some of that benefit.
Right,
You could have
yeah,
if you
'cause
came in
you're-
a little lower, did some of it yourself. But,
if you bought something that was maybe overlooked.
Right.
So that's really rewarding is to, you know, I sort of track sales and I'm like, well, I remember a couple I helped buy a townhouse like that. And I'm like, hey, your neighbor just sold for $100K more than you paid last year. Not that I want them to sell, but even, you know, if they want to maybe get a HELOC or it's just nice for them to know that they have
totally.
wealth in their home.
Yeah, for sure.
That's backdrop.
Yeah.
You know, in these crazy inflationary times and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. If you're a homeowner and you have, you know, you see your property value going up, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
It makes you feel good.
And just to know that
Even if you
have
hate the house, at least, you know, you got something going for you. But
and you have that blanket of, you know, and I know HELOCs can be dangerous if you're not responsible, but if, for most people, I think just having it ready in case there is a major life event, you know, your interest rate's going to be a fraction of what your credit card's going to be. So
right, 100%.
at least have it as a tool if you're ever, God forbid, in a situation where you need quick chunk of cash.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. People, I mean, there's so much you can do with your home equity, you know, if you need it or if things come up. So people knowing that information is definitely, you know, valuable for them.
Sure.
All right. Well, this has been really great, Daniel. I've had so much fun here talking with you today and you sharing some of your insights. Thank you for coming on. Could you tell people how to get in contact with you if they need your help with real estate? Or
Yeah, look me up on Zillow, Daniel Maldonado. Just type in like Fairfax, Samson Properties. I'll probably pop up there. And I just recently revived my Instagram. So I'm posting not so much, you know, your typical real estate stuff, but just stuff I find interesting. So
all right.
Might enjoy it.
All right, cool. Well, we'll make sure that your contact info is with the episode. And yeah, I mean, it's been really fun. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.